A 9-year-old girl stands at her mother's funeral, trembling before a room full of mourners. Everyone expects tears and a heartfelt goodbye. Instead, she locks eyes with her mother's best friend and says 5 words that will send shockwaves through the entire community. "You poisoned my mom, Victoria." What happens next will expose a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that it will leave you questioning everyone you trust. This is the true story of how one child's courage at her darkest moment brought a monster to justice. Lily Foster was only 8 years old when she first noticed something was wrong with her mother. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, and the autumn sun streamed through the kitchen windows of their modest 2-story home in suburban Portland. Her mother, Rebecca, had always been vibrant, energetic, the kind of woman who baked cookies from scratch and never missed one of Lily's soccer games. But that Tuesday, Rebecca's hands trembled as she poured orange juice. She spilled it across the counter, and for just a moment, Lily saw something flash across her mother's face. Fear. "Mommy, are you okay?" Lily had asked, her small voice filled with concern. Rebecca smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired, sweetheart. Just tired." That was the beginning of the end, though Lily didn't know it yet. Rebecca Foster had always been the picture of health. At 34, she was a devoted wife to her husband Daniel, a construction supervisor, and a loving mother to Lily. She worked part-time as a children's librarian, volunteered at the community center, and hosted book clubs in their living room twice a month. Her best friend since college, Victoria Chen, was a constant presence in their lives. So constant that Lily called her Aunt Vicky and considered her part of the family. Victoria was everything Rebecca wasn't. Where Rebecca was soft-spoken and gentle, Victoria was bold and commanding. She was a successful real estate agent, always impeccably dressed, always in control. She'd never married, never had children, and Rebecca used to joke that she and Lily were Victoria's borrowed family. Lily never understood why Victoria needed to borrow a family when she seemed to have everything else. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca's health began to deteriorate in ways that seemed impossible. She developed constant nausea that no medication could relieve. Her thick, dark hair started falling out in clumps. She lost weight rapidly, her clothes hanging off her frame like sheets on a clothesline. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, and her skin took on a grayish pallor that frightened Lily every time she looked at her mother. Daniel took Rebecca to doctor after doctor. They ran test after test. Blood work, CT scans, biopsies, toxicology screens. Everything came back inconclusive or normal. The doctors were baffled. One suggested it might be an autoimmune disorder. Another mentioned chronic fatigue syndrome. A third wondered about rare environmental allergies. No one suspected the truth. Victoria, true to form as Rebecca's best friend, stepped up immediately. She showed up at their house with casseroles and groceries. She drove Rebecca to medical appointments when Daniel had to work. She held Rebecca's hand in hospital waiting rooms and promised that everything would be okay. "You're going to beat this," Victoria would say, squeezing Rebecca's frail hand. "Whatever this is, you're stronger than it." Lily watched all of this from the shadows of childhood, that space where adults think children don't notice or understand. But Lily noticed everything. She noticed how Victoria started bringing special herbal teas, expensive blends from a boutique downtown. "These are miracle workers," Victoria would say, brewing them in Rebecca's favorite teacup, the one with the tiny blue flowers painted on the rim. "My acupuncturist swears by them. They'll boost your immune system, help your body fight back." Rebecca, desperate for anything that might help, drank them gratefully. Every evening, Victoria would arrive just before dinner, and the tea ritual would begin. Sometimes Victoria would stay for hours, sitting at Rebecca's bedside, talking in hushed tones while Daniel worked late shifts to pay the mounting medical bills. Lily noticed how Rebecca seemed worse after the tea. Not immediately, but within an hour, Her mother would become violently ill, rushing to the bathroom while Victoria cleaned up the teacup and saucer with an efficiency that seemed almost practiced. "Poor thing," Victoria would murmur, but Lily, hiding in the hallway, thought she heard something else in that voice. Something that didn't sound like sympathy at all. By December, 3 months into Rebecca's mystery illness, Victoria had essentially moved into the foster home. She claimed it was to help Daniel, who was drowning between work, caring for his wife, and trying to maintain some normalcy for Lily. She took over the guest bedroom, just down the hall from the master suite where Rebecca spent most of her days now, too weak to leave her bed. Lily watched as their home transformed. Victoria replaced Rebecca's cheerful throw pillows with minimalist gray ones. She moved family photos to less prominent locations and hung abstract art that Rebecca had never liked. She reorganized the kitchen, rearranged the living room furniture, and slowly, methodically, erased her mother's presence from the house while Rebecca was still alive to witness it. But it was what happened on a cold January evening that changed everything for Lily. She'd come downstairs for a glass of water, moving quietly in her sock feet. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Through the doorway, Lily saw Victoria standing at the counter, her back to the hallway. She was preparing Rebecca's nightly tea, humming softly to herself. Then Lily watched as Victoria reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small glass vial. Her movements were quick, practiced, as she twisted off the cap and tapped white powder into the teacup. 1 tap. 2 taps. 3. She stirred it carefully, watching the powder dissolve into the amber liquid, and then, this is what Lily would never forget, Victoria smiled. Not a kind smile. Not a concerned friend's smile. A satisfied smile, the kind you make when everything is going exactly according to plan. Lily must have made a sound, a tiny gasp of shock, because Victoria's head snapped up. Their eyes met across the dim hallway. 3 heartbeats, neither moved. Then Victoria's expression shifted into something cold and frightening. She walked toward Lily slowly, deliberately, still holding the teacup. She crouched down until they were eye level, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Good girl," Victoria said, patting Lily's head with her free hand. "Now go back to bed. And remember, I'm family. I'm trying to help your mother. Anyone who says different is a liar." Lily ran back to her room and buried herself under her covers, shaking. She was 8 years old, and she just realized that the monster in her house didn't hide under the bed. It walked around freely, poisoning her mother, and no one else could see it. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of justice that expose hidden truths, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. After that night in the kitchen, Lily's world became a prison of silence. She went to school, ate her meals, did her homework, and played with her toys, all while carrying a secret that was slowly crushing her from the inside. She was living with her mother's murderer, and there was nothing she could do about it. The worst part: watching everyone else fall for Victoria's performance. Her father, Daniel, was completely blind to it. He'd come home exhausted from 12-hour shifts, his shoulders sagging under the weight of medical bills and worry, and there would be Victoria, having cooked dinner, having cleaned the house, having sat with Rebecca all day. She was the perfect friend, the angel in their time of crisis. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Vic," Daniel would say, running his hand through his hair. "Seriously, you've been a lifesaver." Victoria would smile modestly, touching his arm in a way that made Lily's stomach turn. "She's my best friend, Dan. I'd do anything for your family." Lily wanted to scream. She wanted to grab her father by the shoulders and shake him until he saw what she saw. But every time she opened her mouth to speak, she'd remember Victoria's threat. Little girls who tell lies disappear. And Lily was terrified of disappearing. By February, Rebecca could barely leave her bed. Her once bright eyes had sunken into her skull. Her beautiful hair was almost completely gone, covered by a silk scarf that Victoria had bought her. She could only manage a few bites of food each day, and even water sometimes made her violently ill. The doctors had given up trying to diagnose her. They called it failure to thrive, a term that made Lily want to cry every time she heard it. Her mother wasn't failing to thrive. Someone was killing her, slowly and methodically, and everyone was too blind to see it. Victoria's presence became even more constant. She'd be there when Lily left for school and still there when she came home. Her expensive perfume had replaced her mother's lavender scent in the hallway. Her clothes hung in the guest room closet, enough that it looked like a permanent residence. Her toiletries lined the bathroom counter. Her coffee mug sat in the dish rack. Her magazines were stacked on the coffee table. She was moving in, claiming territory, and no one questioned it. One afternoon in late February, Lily came home to find Victoria sitting at her mother's vanity in the master bedroom. Rebecca was asleep, unconscious from the pain medications that were now necessary just to keep her comfortable. Victoria was trying on Rebecca's jewelry, holding earrings up to her ears, fastening necklaces around her throat, admiring herself in the mirror. She saw Lily's reflection and didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. "Your mother won't be needing these much longer," Victoria said casually, removing a sapphire pendant and placing it carefully back in the jewelry box. Such a shame. She had excellent taste. Lily fled to her room and cried into her pillow until she couldn't breathe. But it was the relationship developing between Victoria and her father that truly horrified Lily. She'd catch them in quiet conversations that would stop the moment she entered a room. She'd see Victoria bringing Daniel coffee in the morning, their fingers touching as she handed him the mug. She'd watch them sitting together on the back porch in the evenings, Victoria speaking in low, soothing tones while her father's shoulders gradually relaxed. "You've been so strong through all of this," Victoria would tell him. "Rebecca's lucky to have you. And when this is over, you're going to need support. You're going to need someone who understands what you've been through." The implication was clear, at least to Lily. Victoria wasn't just positioning herself to take over their home. She was positioning herself to take over her father, to slide seamlessly into Rebecca's place the moment Rebecca was gone. One night in early March, Lily woke up to use the bathroom and saw a light on in her father's study. She crept down the hallway and peered through the crack in the door. Victoria was there, perched on the edge of Daniel's desk while he sat in his chair, his head in his hands. She was touching his shoulder, massaging gently, speaking words Lily couldn't quite hear. Then Daniel looked up, and Lily saw tears on his face. "I don't know how much longer she has," he said, his voice breaking. "The doctors say maybe weeks, maybe days." "I know," Victoria said softly. "I know, Dan. And it's okay to grieve. It's okay to think about what comes after. Life doesn't end when Rebecca—" She paused, as if the words were too painful. "When Rebecca passes, you still have Lily. You still have your whole life ahead of you. And you won't be alone. I promise you that." Daniel nodded slowly, and Victoria's hand moved from his shoulder to his cheek, a gesture so intimate that Lily felt sick. She backed away from the door, her heart pounding, and ran back to her room. That's when Lily realized something crucial. If she didn't do something, Victoria was going to get away with everything. She would kill Rebecca, take over their house, seduce her father, and slide into their family like she'd always belonged there. And Lily would be trapped living with her mother's murderer, forced to call her mom someday, forced to pretend that everything was normal. Unless she found proof. The next day, Lily started planning. She was only 8 years old, but fear and desperation made her clever. She began watching Victoria even more carefully, documenting everything in a small notebook she hid under her mattress. She wrote down dates and times when Victoria prepared the tea. She sketched the glass vial she'd seen Victoria use. She noted every time her mother's condition worsened after drinking Victoria's healing tea. But she needed more than notes. She needed evidence that adults would believe. That's when Lily remembered her iPad, the one her grandmother had given her for her 8th birthday. It had a camera. And if she could just catch Victoria in the act one more time, if she could record what she'd witnessed that terrible January night, then maybe, just maybe, someone would finally believe her. For 2 weeks, Lily carried her iPad everywhere, tucked in her backpack, hidden under her homework. She'd set it to video record and position it in places where Victoria might not notice. On the bookshelf in the living room, on the counter partially hidden by the fruit bowl, propped against books on the kitchen table. She recorded hours of nothing. Victoria cooking dinner. Victoria reading magazines. Victoria talking on her phone about real estate deals. But Lily didn't give up. She couldn't give up. Her mother was dying more quickly now. The end was coming, and when it did, Victoria would disappear back to her own life, play the grieving friend at the funeral, and return later to comfort the widower and his daughter. Unless Lily caught her first. It happened on a Thursday evening, March 15th. Lily had positioned her iPad on the kitchen counter, propped against a cookbook, the camera facing the stove where Victoria usually prepared the tea. She'd hit record and then retreated to the dining room, pretending to work on homework while her heart hammered against her ribs. Victoria came into the kitchen at her usual time, 6:30 p.m., humming a tune Lily didn't recognize. She filled the kettle, selected the tea bags from the special tin she kept in the cabinet, and got out Rebecca's flowered teacup. Then she reached into her purse. Lily held her breath, her pencil frozen over her math worksheet. Victoria pulled out the glass vial. The camera had a perfect view. She opened it carefully, tapped the white powder into the teacup. 1, 2, 3 times, and stirred it slowly, watching the powder dissolve. And then, just as she had that first night, Victoria smiled. A small, satisfied smile that revealed her true nature. Lily's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her pencil. She waited until Victoria carried the tea upstairs to her mother's room. Then she grabbed the iPad and ran to her bedroom, her heart pounding so loudly she thought Victoria might hear it. She had it. Finally, she had proof. But as Lily lay in bed that night, clutching the iPad to her chest, she realized something terrifying. What was she supposed to do with this video? If she showed her father now, Victoria would deny everything. She'd say it was baking powder or sugar or some harmless supplement. She'd say Lily was a confused child who didn't understand what she was seeing. And then she'd know that Lily was trying to expose her. Little girls who tell lies disappear. No, Lily realized. She had to wait. She had to wait for the one moment when Victoria couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't make excuses. A moment when everyone would be watching and listening. She had to wait for the funeral. What would you do if you discovered someone with terrible intentions but no one believed you? Have you ever had to stay silent about something that was eating you alive? Let me know your thoughts below. I read every comment. Rebecca Foster died on March 28th, a cold Tuesday morning when the rain drummed against the windows like fingers tapping impatiently. Lily was at school when it happened, sitting in her third-grade classroom trying to focus on a spelling test while her mother took her last breaths at home. The principal came to get her at 10:47 a.m. Lily would always remember the time because she'd been staring at the clock, watching the second hand tick forward, when Mrs. Henderson knocked on the classroom door. The way the principal's face looked sad and gentle and somehow already apologetic, told Lily everything before a single word was spoken. Her father picked her up in his work truck, still wearing his construction vest, his eyes red and swollen. He didn't say anything on the drive home, just held her hand tightly while tears rolled silently down his cheeks. When they pulled into the driveway, Lily saw the coroner's van, and her stomach dropped. Victoria was waiting on the front porch. She'd been the one with Rebecca when she died, the one who'd called 911, the one who'd held Rebecca's hand during those final moments. She was wearing Rebecca's lavender cardigan, the soft one her mother loved, and something about that detail made Lily want to scream. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Victoria said, pulling Lily into a hug that felt like being trapped. "Your mommy loved you so much. She was so brave right until the very end." Lily stood rigid in Victoria's arms, feeling the iPad in her backpack press against her spine. The evidence. The proof. But not yet. She had to wait just a little longer. The next few days blurred together in a haze of casseroles from neighbors, relatives arriving from out of town, and endless funeral planning. Victoria orchestrated everything with the efficiency of someone who'd been preparing for this moment. She knew which funeral home to call, which flowers Rebecca would have wanted, which hymns should be played. She moved through their house like she owned it, answering phone calls, accepting condolences, making decisions. Lily's grandmother, Patricia, Rebecca's mother, arrived from Phoenix and immediately sensed something wrong. She was a sharp woman in her 60s with Rebecca's same gentle eyes, and she watched Victoria with growing suspicion. "She seems very comfortable here," Patricia said quietly to Daniel one evening, after Victoria had retired to the guest room. "How long has she been staying with you?" "Since January," Daniel replied, exhausted. "She's been incredible, Patricia. I honestly don't know how we would have managed without her. She gave up her own life to help us care for Becca." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Later that night, she found Lily sitting alone in her bedroom, staring at her iPad. "Lily, honey," Patricia said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Are you okay? I know this is impossibly hard." Lily looked at her grandmother, and for a moment, she almost told her everything. Almost showed her the video. Almost begged for help. But then she remembered Victoria's threat, and the words stuck in her throat. "I'm okay, Grandma," she whispered. Patricia studied her for a long moment. "You know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all. I'm here for you." Lily nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I know." The night before the funeral, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her iPad hidden under her pillow, playing the moment over and over in her mind. Tomorrow she would stand in front of everyone and reveal the truth. She would accuse Victoria of murder. She would show the video. But what if no one believed her? What if they thought she was a traumatized child making up stories to cope with grief? What if Victoria found a way to explain it away, and then Lily would be left alone with her, completely vulnerable? Little girls who tell lies disappear. Around midnight, Lily heard voices downstairs. She crept out of bed and moved silently to the top of the stairs, peering down into the living room. Victoria and her father were sitting on the couch, a bottle of wine on the coffee table between them. "You've been so strong through all of this," Victoria was saying, her hand resting on Daniel's knee. "But you don't have to be strong all the time. Not with me." Daniel was crying again, the grief finally overwhelming him. "I keep thinking I should have done more. Should have found better doctors, should have." "Stop," Victoria said firmly, moving closer to him. "You did everything you could. Rebecca's illness was beyond anyone's control. Sometimes these things just happen." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that Lily felt rage burning in her chest. It didn't just happen. Victoria made it happen. She'd spent 6 months systematically poisoning Rebecca, and now she was comforting the widower, positioning herself as his savior. Victoria's hand moved from Daniel's knee to his face, wiping away his tears. "You're not alone, Dan. You'll never be alone. I'll always be here for you and Lily. Always." Then she leaned in and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but Daniel didn't pull away. He sat frozen, confused, grieving, and Victoria smiled softly. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay to need comfort. It's okay to think about tomorrow." Lily backed away from the stairs, her whole body shaking. She returned to her room and pulled out the notebook where she'd been documenting everything. She wrote down what she'd just witnessed, the date and time, every detail. Then she opened her iPad and checked the video one more time. There was Victoria, clear as day, pouring poison into her mother's tea. Tomorrow everyone would see it. Tomorrow the truth would finally come out. But tonight, Lily was still just a terrified 9-year-old girl who missed her mother more than words could express. The morning of the funeral arrived with gray skies and a persistent drizzle. Lily woke early, her stomach in knots. She dressed in the black dress her grandmother had bought her, carefully slipped her iPad into a small bag, and stared at herself in the mirror. Today was the day. Today she would find her voice. Downstairs, the house was already filled with activity. Relatives clustered in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. Victoria moved among them like a ghost, accepting hugs and murmured condolences, playing the role of grieving best friend to perfection. She was wearing a black dress that had belonged to Rebecca. Lily recognized it immediately. Her mother had worn it to Lily's school award ceremony just last year. The sight of Victoria in her mother's clothes, in her mother's house, on the morning of her mother's funeral, made something inside Lily harden into steel. "Lily, sweetheart," Victoria said, noticing her on the stairs. "Come here, darling. Let me fix your hair." Every instinct screamed at Lily to refuse, but she forced herself to walk down the stairs. She had to act normal. She had to make Victoria believe everything was fine until the moment she revealed the truth. Victoria's fingers were gentle as she brushed Lily's hair, but Lily could feel the possessiveness in each stroke. This was a woman who had stolen everything: her mother's health, her home, her husband, and now she was grooming her victim's daughter, molding her into the compliant stepdaughter she would need to complete her takeover. "You're being so brave," Victoria murmured. "Your mother would be so proud of you." Lily's hands clenched into fists, but she said nothing. At the funeral home, people gathered in clusters, sharing memories of Rebecca. Lily heard them talking about what a wonderful person her mother had been, how tragic her death was, how mysterious the illness had been. No one suspected. No one knew. The service was scheduled to start at 2 p.m. At 1:30, Lily's father pulled her aside. "Lily, honey, I know you wanted to say something today," Daniel said gently. "But if you're not ready, if it's too hard, you don't have to. Everyone will understand." This was her moment to back out, to stay silent, to let Victoria win. Lily thought about her mother lying in that casket, about the 6 months of suffering, about Victoria wearing her clothes and kissing her husband and getting away with murder. "I'm ready, Daddy," Lily said quietly. "I need to do this. For Mom." Daniel hugged her tightly, having no idea what his daughter was about to reveal. As they took their seats in the front row, Victoria positioned herself right next to Daniel, her hand finding his. Lily sat on his other side, her bag with the iPad clutched in her lap, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. The service began. The pastor spoke about Rebecca's kindness, her love for her family, her commitment to her community. People cried. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the picture of devastated grief. Then came the moment for family to speak. Lily's grandmother went first, sharing memories of Rebecca as a little girl, her voice breaking with emotion. Then Daniel stood, barely able to get through 3 sentences before grief overwhelmed him. Victoria rubbed his back consolingly as he returned to his seat. Then the pastor looked at Lily. And now, Rebecca's daughter Lily would like to say a few words. This was it. The moment she'd been planning for, dreading, preparing for. Lily stood on shaking legs and walked to the podium, her bag clutched in her small hands. She looked out at the sea of faces. Relatives, neighbors, her mother's friends, all waiting to hear a grieving daughter's tribute. She found Victoria's face in the crowd. The woman was smiling at her encouragingly, having no idea what was coming. Lily's hands trembled as she gripped the edges of the podium, but when she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "My mom didn't just get sick," Lily began. "Someone made her sick. Have you ever had to overcome obstacles to reveal a truth that no one wanted to hear? What challenges did you face when standing up for what's right, even when you were afraid? Share your experience below." The room erupted in confused whispers. Lily watched as heads turned, people exchanged glances, uncertain whether they'd heard correctly. Her grandmother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father half rose from his seat, confusion and concern warring on his face. And Victoria's smile had frozen on her face, but her eyes had gone cold and calculating. "Lily, sweetheart," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false concern as she stood. "I know you're hurting right now. Grief can make us say things we don't mean." "I mean every word," Lily said, her voice growing stronger. She reached into her bag and pulled out her iPad, holding it up for everyone to see. "And I have proof." The whispers grew louder. The pastor looked uncertain, glancing between Lily and the adults in the front row. Daniel stood fully now, moving toward his daughter. "Lily, honey, what are you talking about?" he asked gently, though his voice shook. "Daddy, please," Lily said, tears streaming down her face now. "Please just listen. Please let me show you." She looked back at Victoria, who had gone pale. Their eyes locked, and in that moment Lily saw the threat there. The warning. Little girls who tell lies disappear. But Lily wasn't going to disappear. Not anymore. For 6 months, I watched Victoria poison my mom, Lily said, her voice ringing through the funeral home. She brought special tea every day. She said it would help Mom get better, but it made her worse. I saw her putting white powder in Mom's tea. I was scared to tell anyone because Victoria threatened me. She said little girls who tell lies disappear. The room had gone deadly silent now. Everyone was staring at Victoria, whose carefully constructed mask was beginning to crack. "This is insane," Victoria said, her voice sharp. "Daniel, your daughter is clearly traumatized. She needs help, she needs therapy, she's confused." "I'm not confused," Lily shouted, her small voice filled with all the rage and grief she'd been holding inside for months. "I know what I saw. And I recorded it." She held up the iPad again, her hands shaking. "On March 15th, I recorded Victoria putting poison in my mom's tea. It's all here. Everything." Daniel reached for the iPad, but Victoria moved faster. She lunged toward Lily, her face twisted with fury. All pretense of the caring friend vanished in an instant. "Give me that," Victoria snarled. But Lily's grandmother was faster. Patricia intercepted Victoria, grabbing her arm and pulling her back with surprising strength. "Don't you dare touch my granddaughter," Patricia said, her voice like ice. Two of Rebecca's cousins, both large men, moved to restrain Victoria, who was struggling now, her composure completely shattered. "This is ridiculous," Victoria shouted. "She's a child. She doesn't understand what she saw. I was helping Rebecca. I gave up everything to help her." Daniel had taken the iPad from Lily's hands. His fingers trembled as he navigated to the video. Lily watched her father's face as he pressed play, watched as the color drained from his cheeks, watched as horror and disbelief and finally, terrible understanding washed over his features. The video was clear. There was Victoria in their kitchen, pulling out the glass vial, tapping powder into the teacup, stirring it with that satisfied smile. "Oh my God," Daniel whispered. "Oh my God, what did you do?" He looked up at Victoria, and the betrayal in his eyes was devastating. "What did you do to my wife?" "It's not what it looks like," Victoria said quickly, desperately. It was a supplement, a natural remedy. I was trying to help." "You were trying to help?" Patricia's voice was shaking with fury. "My daughter is dead. My beautiful Rebecca is dead because of you." "Someone call the police," one of the cousins said, pulling out his phone. Victoria's eyes darted around the room, looking for escape, looking for allies, finding none. Every face stared at her with horror and disgust. The perfect mask she'd worn for so long had been torn away, revealing the monster beneath. "You don't understand," Victoria said, her voice breaking now. "Rebecca had everything. Everything I wanted. The perfect husband, the perfect daughter, the perfect life. It wasn't fair. Why did she get everything while I had nothing?" The confession spilled out of her like poison finally being purged. "I loved her, you know. She was my best friend. But I hated her too. I hated how easy everything was for her. How happy she was. How Daniel looked at her with such love. I wanted that. I deserved that." She looked at Daniel, her eyes wild. "I could have made you happy, Dan. Happier than she ever did. I was right there, waiting, caring for you, being what you needed. All I had to do was wait for her to be gone, and then we could start over. The three of us, you, me, and Lily. We could have been a real family." "You're insane," Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You killed my wife. You murdered Rebecca. I freed you." Victoria screamed. "I freed you from a weak, useless woman who couldn't give you what you needed. I gave you a chance at a real life." The sound of sirens cut through the air. Within minutes, police officers entered the funeral home. Victoria tried to run, but the cousins held her firmly. She fought, screaming obscenities, all sophistication and charm gone, replaced by something feral and desperate. An officer approached Lily. "Young lady, you're very brave. Can you show me that video?" Lily nodded, her whole body shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She showed the officer the video, explained what she'd witnessed, told him about the vial and the threats. The officer's face was grim. "We'll need to take this as evidence. And we'll need to do a full autopsy on your mother's body. But based on what I'm seeing here, I think we have more than enough for an arrest." They handcuffed Victoria, who had gone silent now, her face blank. As they led her past Lily, she stopped and looked down at the little girl who had destroyed all her carefully laid plans. "You should have stayed quiet," Victoria hissed. "You should have let me win." "My mom taught me to always tell the truth," Lily said, meeting her eyes without flinching. "Even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary." As Victoria was led away, Lily collapsed into her father's arms, sobbing. All the fear, all the grief, all the terrible burden she'd been carrying finally released. Daniel held her tight, crying with her, both of them mourning Rebecca and the nightmare they'd been living through. Patricia wrapped her arms around both of them, and they stood there in the funeral home, a family torn apart by betrayal but finally, free of the lies. The weeks that followed were a blur of police interviews, media attention, and legal proceedings. The autopsy confirmed what Lily had known all along. Rebecca had been systematically poisoned with small doses of arsenic over a 6-month period. The vial found in Victoria's possession matched the residue in Rebecca's system. Victoria Chen was charged with first-degree murder, attempted fraud, and child endangerment. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Lily's video, the toxicology reports, testimony from neighbors who'd witnessed Victoria's increasingly possessive behavior, Victoria's lawyers advised her to take a plea deal. But Victoria refused. She insisted on a trial, convinced she could make a jury understand that what she'd done was justified, that she'd been driven to it by years of watching Rebecca have the life Victoria felt she deserved. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Lily had to testify, had to stand in front of a courtroom full of strangers and tell her story. It was terrifying, but her father held her hand the entire time, and her grandmother sat right behind her, and Lily found strength she didn't know she had. The prosecutor called her one of the bravest young people he'd ever met. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Victoria Chen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, she finally broke, sobbing, screaming that it wasn't fair, that she'd only wanted to be happy, that Rebecca had everything and she had nothing. But no one felt sorry for her. Not anymore. The judge looked directly at Victoria during sentencing and said something that Lily would remember forever. "You didn't just kill Rebecca Foster. You tried to kill the truth. But truth has a way of surviving, even in the smallest, bravest voices." 6 months after the trial, Lily stood in her mother's memorial garden, a beautiful space her father and grandmother had created in their backyard, filled with Rebecca's favorite flowers and a bench where Lily could sit and talk to her mom. Life was different now. Quieter. Sadder in some ways, but also lighter. The house felt like their home again. Patricia had moved in to help care for Lily while Daniel worked, and slowly, the 3 of them were building a new kind of family. One built on truth and love and the memory of Rebecca. Lily was in therapy now, working through the trauma of what she'd experienced. Her therapist said she showed remarkable resilience for someone so young, but Lily didn't feel remarkable. She just felt like a girl who missed her mom and was trying her best to keep going. School was better. Her classmates had heard about the trial, everyone had, and while some treated her like she was fragile or strange, her real friends stuck by her. They understood that Lily wasn't broken, just healing. On a warm September afternoon, almost a year after Rebecca's death, Lily's class had an assembly about bullying and speaking up when you witness wrongdoing. The principal asked if Lily would be willing to share her story. Not all the details, but the message that even when it's scary, even when adults don't believe you, speaking the truth matters. Lily stood in front of her school and told them about courage. About how being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. She told them that your voice matters, no matter how small you are. When she finished, the entire auditorium stood and applauded. Her father, sitting in the back, wiped tears from his eyes. After school, Daniel took Lily out for ice cream, a tradition they'd started in the months after the trial. Little moments of normalcy and joy in the middle of healing. "I'm proud of you, Pumpkin," Daniel said. using the nickname Rebecca had given her. Your mom would be so proud of who you're becoming. Do you think about her every day? Lily asked. Every single day, Daniel admitted. And I always will. But you know what? The pain isn't as sharp anymore. I can remember the good times without it breaking me. We're going to be okay, Lily. It's going to take time, but we're going to be okay. Lily believed him. She could feel it happening already. The slow, painful, necessary process of healing. That night, Lily added an entry to the journal she'd started keeping, a way to process her feelings and memories. She wrote about the assembly, about her father's words, about the way the autumn air smelled like new beginnings. And then she wrote a letter to her mother. Dear Mom, I miss you every day. I miss your laugh and your hugs and the way you always knew when I needed extra love. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I was too scared to speak up sooner. But I did speak up eventually. I found my voice. And because I did, Victoria can't hurt anyone else. She can't steal anyone else's family. I think that's what you would have wanted me to do. You always taught me to be brave, to tell the truth, to stand up for what's right. I'm trying, Mom. I'm trying to be the kind of person you'd be proud of. I love you forever. Lily. She closed the journal and looked out her window at the memorial garden, where fireflies were beginning to dance in the twilight. Somewhere in the house, she could hear her grandmother making dinner, her father's footsteps on the stairs, the normal sounds of a home that was learning to be whole again. Lily had lost her mother. She'd lived through a nightmare. She'd faced down a monster and won. And now, finally, she was learning to be a child again. This story shows how one act of courage can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference by speaking your truth, even when it's difficult? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments. 3 years have passed since that devastating day at the funeral home. Lily is now 12 years old, in 7th grade, and thriving in ways that once seemed impossible. She's become an advocate for children's rights and victim awareness. Working with her therapist and a local nonprofit organization, Lily helps train social workers and teachers to recognize signs when children might be in danger or carrying secrets too heavy for them to bear. Her message is simple but powerful. Listen to children. Believe them. Create safe spaces for them to speak their truth. Daniel has remarried, not quickly, and not to fill the void Rebecca left, but to someone he met through a grief support group. Sarah is a widow herself, understanding the complicated journey of loving again after loss. She's gentle with Lily, never trying to replace Rebecca, but offering friendship and support. Lily calls her by her first name and treasures the relationship they're building. Patricia still lives with them, and their home is filled with Rebecca's memory in healthy ways. Photos on the walls, stories shared at dinner, her recipes still cooked on special occasions. They don't hide from grief, but they don't let it consume them either. Lily keeps her mother's journal and adds to it regularly, writing letters to Rebecca about her life, her dreams, her struggles. It's her way of staying connected to the woman who gave her life and taught her courage. Victoria remains in prison, having exhausted all her appeals. She's expressed no remorse, still maintaining in letters to anyone who'll listen that she was the real victim in this tragedy. Lily doesn't read those letters. She's learned that some people will never accept responsibility for the harm they cause, and that's not her burden to carry. The memorial garden in their backyard has grown more beautiful with each passing season. It's become a place of peace not just for the foster family, but for neighbors and friends who knew Rebecca. Sometimes Lily finds flowers left by people who still remember her mother's kindness. Lily's story reminds us that courage doesn't always look like we expect it to. Sometimes courage is a small voice speaking truth in a room full of doubters. Sometimes it's carrying an impossible burden until you find the right moment to set it down. Sometimes it's a 9-year-old girl who refused to let evil win. But more than that, this story is a reminder about the power of listening, truly listening to the people in our lives, especially children. How many times do we dismiss what young people tell us because we think they don't understand? How many truths go unspoken because children are afraid no one will believe them? Lily's bravery exposed a murderer and brought justice for her mother. But it also started important conversations about how we protect the vulnerable, how we create safe spaces for truth-telling, and how we ensure that fear never silences those who need to speak. Rebecca Foster's death was a tragedy, but the way her daughter honored her memory, by refusing to let lies win, by standing up for justice, by using her voice even when it shook with fear, that's the legacy that lives on. Every day, in big ways and small, we have choices about whether we'll speak truth or stay silent, whether we'll believe those who come to us with difficult revelations or dismiss them, whether we'll stand up for what's right or look the other way because it's easier. Lily chose courage. She chose truth. She chose justice. And because of that choice, Victoria Chen will never harm another family. Other children who hear Lily's story will know their voices matter. And Rebecca Foster's legacy isn't just the tragedy of her death, but the extraordinary courage of the daughter she raised. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary courage can come from the most unexpected places. If this story touched your heart and made you think about the power of truth and justice, please like this video. It helps more people discover these important stories that need to be heard. Subscribe for more true stories of courage, justice, and the resilience of the human spirit. These are the stories that restore our faith in doing what's right, even when it's impossibly hard. And most importantly, I want you to think about your own life. Is there a truth you need to speak? Is there a child in your life who might need you to really listen? Is there a moment where your courage, however small it might feel, could change everything? What act of truth or courage will you commit to this week? Will you finally have that difficult conversation? Will you stand up for someone who can't stand up for themselves? Will you create a safe space for someone to share their burden? Let me know in the comments below. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And just like Lily, you have the power to change someone's entire world by simply refusing to let fear silence your truth. Thank you for watching, and remember, the smallest voice speaking truth can echo louder than the loudest lie. Be that voice. Be that courage. Be that change. Until next time, stay brave, stay true, and never underestimate the power of speaking up.